Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. I do hope you're doing remarkably well, and I hope you've had a lovely day and are about to have a really super evening. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, Maxwell Capelli was manning his mother's cake stand at the farmer's market, where her delicious selection of baked goods was on display, ranging from lemon chiffon cake to Boston cream pie. For on a Friday morning his mother would turn the family kitchen into a bakery, so that the house smelt richly of melted butter and caramelized sugar. And then on Saturday mornings very early, Maxwell and his mother would sell his mother's cakes at the market. And they didn't last for very long, as with word of mouth news had spread like wildfire that Michelle Capelli made the most fantastic cakes, and people weren't wrong about that, as she was without question a phenomenal baker, whose recipes were always unique, for she could turn an ordinary sponge cake into something exceedingly special. It would seem her stand at the farmer's market was a good income earner, even though Michelle Capelli did not actually need the money. But she was an industrious woman who liked to keep as busy as possible, and besides anything else, it didn't hurt to earn a bit of extra money on the side, to put towards a holiday the family could enjoy perhaps. On that Saturday morning, business had been booming at the farmer's market. People came and went in the usual way. Many shoppers were looking for some great deals, and were eagerly buying cakes and cookies from Mrs. Capelli's stand. And it wouldn't be long before the last cakes grew legs when a customer came to claim them all. And then Michelle Capelli and her son Maxwell would leave the market, their pockets heavy with change, feeling rather good about their day's accomplishments. The energy that morning, after Maxwell and his mother had set up their stand in their usual spot, was energetic. The market was a bustle of lively, very interested activity. Many locals invariably bumped into each other, as they knew each other well, and would often stand around in circles having long chats, while happily slurping away at iced coffees and lattes. Some people would buy snacks, from samosas to egg rolls and chicken kebabs on sticks, which they would eat on the go, as they walked around the farmer's market, their keen, curious eyes feasting on all the interesting displays that were visually spectacular to behold. There was a vast selection of fine American cheeses, garden vegetables and fruits, partisan breads, baked goods, nuts and dried fruits, and the list goes on and on. The market was like those open markets you find all over the world, from places like Italy to Morocco, Thailand and India. It offered a vast, very selective range of goods, from wild honeys to homemade jams and pickles, leather handbags, woolen sweaters, cosmetics, table mats and linens, artists' drawings, paintings, old books, antiques, and the choices seem to be like a bottomless pit that goes on for ever and ever, without an end in sight. Put it this way, anything you could think of to buy would possibly have been available at the farmer's market. Within reason, of course. Maxwell Capelli was still at school. He was 15 years old. So being behind his mother's cake stand at the farmer's market was something he thoroughly enjoyed doing. As much like his mother, he appeared to be hardwired to keep himself busy, and the farmer's market was a cool place to hang out. He met so many interesting people from all walks of life there, and even from other parts of the globe, and would happily engage with many of them in a light-hearted, cheerful banter. Of course, he would have much preferred to be working behind a stand that sold model aircraft or cars, but you couldn't have everything, could you? But Maxwell liked counting the money he and his mother made, and he'd helped her every Saturday, and doing so benefited him greatly because he received half of the earnings from her, which he intended to put towards buying his first car. The only drawback about working at the farmer's market was that Maxwell and his mother, Michelle Capelli, would have to rise from their beds excruciatingly early in the morning, when it was far from pleasant, just to get his mother's large SUV packed with all the cakes and cookies she had cooked the previous day. It would be dark and unforgiving outside when they rose from their beds. If the weather was chilly out of doors, It was certainly a laborious struggle for Maxwell to get out of bed, without a little bit of encouragement from his mother, because like any typical teenager, if he could sleep in, he surely would have done so. But he knew this job was worth his while, and he reminded himself that the more he helped his mother out at the farmer's market, the sooner the money he made would pile up, and before long he might have enough money to put towards buying his first car. For certainly over the years he'd been saving his money long and hard, in an interest-bearing account, and he prided himself in doing all kinds of odd jobs in the neighbourhood for various people in order to earn some much-needed surplus cash, and there was no job that Maxwell would turn his nose up to, for he was not afraid of a little hard work. Many of the locals offered him work from mowing their lawns or painting fences and windows. Maxwell's father was reasonably well off, not only because of his job in the city, that paid significantly well, but because his own grandparents had left him a substantial amount of money in their will. Maxwell had never ever been spoilt by his parents, as all the money he had acquired in the bank came from his own hard work and efforts, and certainly made him feel rather accomplished. He was glad he wasn't getting handouts from his parents like some of the boys at school so obviously did. There was something so self-satisfying and rewarding about making your own money independently. When Maxwell was woken up in the early hours of the morning to go to the farmer's market by his mother, who would give him a vigorous shake and tell him to "Wakey wake, rise and shine," Maxwell would pop out of bed as quickly as he could, so he wasn't tempted to remain under the sheets and go back to sleep, which would have been very easy for him to do. When he woke up in the morning, he'd visualize the car he intended to buy, and that was enough for him to feel assured that there was some worthwhile purpose in this madness of getting up at this ungodly hour, when even the light of the early morning refused to make its appearance, and the sleeping neighbourhood where they lived was cast under a dark veil, and the only activity you might see, as the locals slept, was a couple of raccoons trying to raid a nearby dustbin that had fallen on its side. Michelle Capelli would make both of them steaming hot cups of chocolate, along with toasted cheese and bacon sandwiches, and then they'd both pack her oversized SUV with all the baked goods, and finally drive down the lonely streets together, where not a soul could be seen. And in the darkness, they'd make their way to the farmer's market. Boogle, their Italian greyhound, would make such a dreadful commotion when they got out of their beds to prep for the day ahead. Indeed, he'd bark so very loudly that poor Mr. Capelli would wake up looking both disgruntled and bad-tempered. He hated his sleep being so rudely disturbed, and loathed and abhorred the fact that his wife Michelle insisted on having a stand at the farmer's market, where she could sell her cakes and cookies. He didn't know why his wife couldn't be happy just staying at home like any regular housewife would. Michelle did not need to work, for they had a very good standard of living, but she appeared to be one of those infuriating individuals that always involved herself in so many extracurricular activities. She'd work at the school tuck shop, selling hamburgers and hot dogs to the kids. She'd help the ladies prepare coffee for all the parishioners to enjoy after a church service. She went to yoga twice a week. Every Thursday she went swimming at an indoor swimming pool in town, where she would learn to improve her swimming style. She had taken on Irish dancing lessons. She always seemed to be on the go, doing this or doing that. She'd watch Maxwell's sports games at school, and she was always his greatest cheerleader. She'd occasionally meet up with girlfriends for coffee in town. Michelle Capelli was well liked. She had many friends. She was very social and had an effervescent personality which made people instinctively warm to her. Julius Capelli groaned on this morning as he entered the kitchen, looking even more dishevelled than usual. He was wearing his tartan pyjamas, along with a notable, rather disenchanted frown on his face. His short brown hair was standing up on end like Sonic the Hedgehog, and his chin was covered in some overnight stubble. He stared at his wife Michelle through dispirited green eyes that did not see any humour on this cruel, chilly morning. "Why do you have to do this, Michelle?" "Do what, Julius?" Michelle Capelli asked, looking as innocent as a day-old lamb, even though she absolutely knew why Julius was not in the best of moods, as every Saturday morning Boogle's incessant barking would wake him up prematurely, and Julius would always complain bitterly about having his sleep so rudely and inconsiderately disturbed.
"What do you think I mean, love? Don't you play the innocent with me. You know exactly what I'm getting at. I'm exceedingly aggrieved with both you and Maxwell, always insisting upon ridiculously getting up at this insane hour of the morning to go to the farmer's market in order to sell your cakes. If you must know, I'm getting extremely tired of all this sleep deprivation, and Boogle's barking isn't making things any better for me."
"I'm very sorry you were woken up prematurely, Julius. Go back to bed, why don't you? Just ignore us. We'll try to be as quiet as we possibly can."
"I can't very well go back to bed. Not when I'm wide awake. The commotion you're making is just unbelievable. How is a man supposed to sleep through all this? Why do you have to work at the farmer's market anyway? We don't need the money."
"Because I enjoy the job," said Michelle. "I'm a very good cook, and I like making cakes and cookies and selling them. Besides, it's a great income earner, is it not? And Maxwell is also industriously making good money. And before long he'll have enough money to buy his own car. And that's got to be a positive."
"We don't need the money. How many times do I have to tell you that, love? I make more than enough money to support our family. And I'm sorry, but selling a few cakes at the farmer's market isn't life-changing on the financial front. Investing is so much better than that. Why do we have to make our lives so much more complicated by doing so many more things? Isn't life stressful enough already, without adding a whole wretched laundry list of things to do? I honestly don't understand you at times. I mean, if we were hard up, well, it would be all hands on deck, would it not? And I would understand your need to work hard. But when we don't have that kind of need, why do you bother? I can't imagine any of those high-tech billionaires wasting a Saturday morning selling some cakes at a farmer's market."
"Well, I may remind you, Julius, we're not billionaires. And even if we were, I'd still sell cakes at the farmer's market. Money isn't everything, you know. I sincerely hope, if I was a billionaire myself, I just wouldn't sit on my backside doing nothing all day, and just being waited on by staff. That would be pitiful, and life would be dreary and boring, if you ask me."
"So even if you were a billionaire with more money than sense, you'd still insist on working at this outrageous hour? Are you insane?"
"Absolutely I would. There's nothing more satisfactory in this life than some good hard work."
"What is wrong with you, love? Don't you already do far too much already, helping out at the school tuck shop, and God knows what else? These days, Fridays are chaotic when I come home from work. You spend the entire day baking in the kitchen, and when I return home I find piles of cake boxes spread all over the countertops, and then most of Saturday is robbed, as you spend all the morning at the farmer's market. Haven't you heard the saying, less is more? The trouble with you, love, is you always seem to have ants in your pants. You're always on the move. I barely get to see you these days, especially over the weekends, and I'm beginning to resent your absence. It would be nice to do things as a family for a change. But no, you insist on swanning off to do your little things, don't you?"
"Oh, goodness gracious me. Don't overreact, Julius. How many times have we gone over this together? Even if we don't need the money, I like to be an independent, resourceful woman and do something constructive with my life. And it's a great deal of fun for me baking all these cakes and selling them at the farmer's market. People appreciate my work. Me and Waxwell, well, we meet so many interesting people from all walks of life. People we'd never ever get to meet if we didn't work at the farmer's market. I've made some lovely friends over the years. Besides anything else, it's a cool place to hang out. And I get so much positive feedback from the cakes I make. It's very rewarding for me. It makes me feel accomplished, as if I'm doing something worthwhile with my life, that people actually appreciate.
I've learned that giving is so much better than receiving. But I wouldn't expect a tech billionaire to appreciate that. And even though you're not a billionaire, you don't understand my reasoning on this. Of course I don't understand your reasoning on this, because you make no sense at all, love. If you want the truth, I think it would be a lot more constructive of you if you slept in on a Saturday morning with me, and it would be very pleasant for me. It would certainly make a change from being woken up at this god-awful senseless hour of the morning, when it's still dark outside. And it doesn't help hearing Boogle yapping away, as if we've just had a house invasion. And then there you are in the kitchen with Maxwell, clattering around the place, and getting the SUV packed up with all those cakes of yours. I wake up to smell coffee and sizzling bacon on the go. And it all smells delicious. But I don't want to be smelling that stuff in the early hours of the morning, before the dawn has even broken. It's like the kitchen has turned into a busy bus station, and I'm always cruelly flung out of my sleep, without any apology from you. And it's usually in the middle of a really good dream of mine. There's nothing worse than being disturbed from a good sleep, let me tell you. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, said Michelle Capelli apologetically. Of course I appreciate that, I really do, sweetheart. And for the record, I'm so very sorry, said Michelle Capelli apologetically. Me and Maxwell don't intend to wake you up. We do try our hardest to be quiet. But getting those cakes piled up in the SUV is a noisy business. And of course it doesn't help that Boogle's bark, well, it's so loud, isn't it? He'd wake the living dead if given half the chance. I do try to be quiet, though, I promise. Quiet? Snorted Julius Capelli. I don't think you know the meaning of the word, love. I work damn hard at the office during the week, and I look very forward to the weekends, and sleeping in is something I've always appreciated. But not any more. Not since you've got this wild, fanciful idea of yours to sell cakes at the farmer's market. And now you've roped in Maxwell to help you as well, by bribing him, because he wants to get a car. So that I'm pretty much left alone on my own devices on a Saturday morning, pottering around the house like a lonely old man. It's not fair, you know. Oh, there you go again. I'm sure there are lots of things you can do while I'm away, at the farmer's market. It wouldn't do you any harm, Julius, to take Boogle for a walk around the neighbourhood. He could easily burn off some of his excessive energy. You could relax on the patio, read a book perhaps, take pottery classes on a Saturday morning. Mr. Robbins from number 32 has been taking pottery classes and loves it. He's become quite a dab hand at the wheel, I'll have you know. And I've seen his work. It's really lovely. You could do something like that. It gives your life a meaning and a purpose. Bully for Mr. Robbins. That's what I say, said Julius sarcastically. I'm happy for him if he derives pleasure from a wheel and a ball of clay. But I'm afraid I'm not so easily pleased. I certainly don't want to be like you and get involved in a whole host of extracurricular activities. Don't you get it, love? I'm busy enough during the week. I have my hands full. I need to relax. I certainly don't want to have other things that I need to do on my hands. If I was retired, of course, it might be a completely different story. But when I'm home for the weekend, I want to relax. What about that is so hard for you to understand? Don't you get it, Michelle? I miss you and Maxwell when you're not around. I miss the family time we spend together. Why on earth do you have to rope Maxwell into this madness as well? It doesn't make any sense to me. Nothing makes any sense to you, love. Look at the way you talk. It's so negative. If you must know, I think it's good Maxwell helps me out selling cakes. You should be encouraging our 15-year-old to be an entrepreneur, to learn about dealing with money and meeting all kinds of people. These are very good life lessons to learn, Julius, and not something to be sneezed at. Some teenagers Maxwell's age get allowances from their parents, but we've never ever done that to Maxwell. We refused to spoil him. We wanted him to become independent and earn his own money. and I, for one, could not be more proud of his accomplishments. Teenagers should be actively encouraged to become more self-sufficient and independent. And believe it or not, Maxwell thoroughly enjoys spending time at the farmer's market. And I honestly don't understand why you don't appreciate that. I think the whole experience is remarkably good for him. And he's very good at socializing with other people. You should see him. He's incredible. It really is cool, Dad, said Maxwell. I mean, I hate getting out of bed early. Let's not kid. And it's horrible when it's cold outside. But once me and Mum have packed the car and we've got to the market, the morning goes very quickly. And I make some good money. And as Mum says, we meet some amazing people. You should check it out for yourself, Dad. Come around to the market this morning. It's a blast, I promise you. And some of the storeholders are very good people. Son, I can see you're enthusiastic, much like your mother. You are two birds of a feather. I suppose I should be grateful that you're industrious like you are, and not a layabout, lazy man. Young man, shall I say? But I have no intention visiting you at the market, I'm sorry. I want to make the most of relaxing over the weekend. But I think I will take Poogle for a walk. He could certainly do with burning off some of that excess energy you speak of. You do that, love. It's a great idea, said Michelle Capelli. Besides anything else, Boogle would almost certainly appreciate the exercise. And I think you could do with some as well. It will certainly help you to relax and let off some steam. And you know what? So many locals walk their dogs around the neighbourhood. So you could have some nice chats. And I'm sure you'll have an incredibly pleasant morning. Julius grumbled under his breath. That bacon is making me extremely hungry, he admitted, as he watched his wife tossing it around in the pan. He found his stomach was grumbling, and he was beginning to drool like a dog. Is there any of that bacon going spare, love? I'm up and about now. You made sure of that. So I might as well have a bite to eat before I return to bed, with only Boogle for company. But of course you can have some bacon. I always make extra anyway, said Michelle Capelli, trotting over from the range and placing a couple of bacon slices and cheese into some toasted bread. She cut the bread into halves and brought them over to her husband and poured him a mug of hot chocolate, which seemed to appease him a little, although he did still look rather bad-tempered and cantankerous. There was no doubt Michelle's husband hated being disturbed in the early hours of the morning like this. She did feel bad about it, of course, that they always seemed to manage to wake him up, but it wasn't exactly her fault that Boogle seemed to always sound the alarm. Boogle was, in fact, Julius's dog, as he'd grown up with greyhounds all his life and was devoted to them as a boy, so he had a soft spot for them, and Boogle seemed to know that Julius had chosen him, because when Julius was around, he stuck to his owner like superglue. After the family ate their sandwiches in silence around the kitchen table, chugging back warm mugs of chocolate, Maxwell and his mother packed the SUV, bidding Julius farewell. He was still sitting at the kitchen table, drinking another cup of hot chocolate, while finishing the other half of his wife's leftover sandwich, which she hadn't finished eating. I think we'll go now, said Michelle Capelli, reaching out to give her husband a kiss. We'll be off. How long are you going to be, love? Asked Julius rather abruptly. I don't know, sweetheart, but I promise you as soon as we've sold the last cake, we'll be back. I miss you already, love. Me too. I'm already missing you. Michelle Capelli felt bad leaving her husband at home on his own, as she did every Saturday morning, but at least he had Boogle for company, and that dog was a real character, even though he had an infuriating bark on him that could drive you completely bonkers. She knew she'd be back home by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but it certainly didn't help that Julius hated her doing this job, and yes, she felt guilty about it, because she didn't really need the job. But it was so rewarding and satisfying for her to sell her cakes to appreciative strangers, along with the regulars who bought her cakes religiously every weekend. Michelle Capelli loved the social interaction she had with people, and found the experience to be genuinely enjoyable. She really couldn't think of anything worse than sleeping in on a Saturday morning,
because she was a doer, but she'd never let her husband fully understand that. Besides anything else, she did genuinely believe she was teaching Maxwell some invaluable life lessons about being an entrepreneur, lessons he'd never learn at school. He was learning to be self-sufficient without relying on handouts from his parents. Many teenagers these days, pinned to their cell phones, did not learn to connect socially with other people, as all their communication was done via social media, and in many cases their social skills were sorely lacking. So bringing Maxwell to the farmers' market, where he was having one-on-one contact with regular folk and learning to interact with them, was a very good learning experience for him. Maxwell was a lot like her, as he was also a doer and thoroughly enjoyed keeping himself constructively busy. In the school holidays, Maxwell would earn extra money, doing as many jobs as possible for people around the neighbourhood. He would paint windows and doors, mow lawns and walk dogs, and much like his mother, he enjoyed the exhilaration of keeping himself busy. Maxwell had always been quite shy and demure by nature, but luckily with all the social interaction his mother had actively encouraged over the years, he had come out of his shell considerably, and was now extremely popular at school, and very well liked by almost everyone he met, for he had a genuinely warm heart. The SUV his mother was driving that morning swept through the lonely streets of their neighbourhood, basked under the dark shadows of a morning that was struggling to be birthed, for the moon was still discernible in the sky. Maxwell had his nose pinned to the glass pane of the passenger side seat. There was something so comforting about driving through the dark streets, without seeing a single soul in sight, but he knew it wouldn't be long before the sun robustly broke through the grey fog, with a gentle trickle of light that would get bolder and bolder and brighter as the morning began to progress. By the time they arrived at the market, the sky was beginning to get light. Michelle Capelli parked her SUV in the parking lot, in its regular spot. They began to spend the next hour or so setting up their stand, and then taking regular trips to the SUV to bring out the cakes stored in the back of the car. For the first hour or so, the market had been extremely quiet. Storeholders huddled together, talking together in groups, drinking hot cups of coffee. There was a chill in the air. From 8:30 onwards, the sun was now dominating a cloudless blue sky. The weather had become pleasantly warm, so Maxwell removed the sweater he'd been wearing, feeling happy that it was a warm day. He could see people walking over to various stands, and it wasn't long before people were queuing at his mother's stand to buy her cakes. The first customer of the day was an old woman called Mrs. Hornbury, who usually always arrived first at their cake stand, before anybody else did. The woman was in her 80s, wore a shawl around her grey hair, and had kind brown button-like eyes. "You're our first customer today, Mrs. Hornbury," Maxwell teased. "But of course I'm the first. I wouldn't have it any other way," said Mrs. Hornbury, with a twinkle in her eyes. "My old father always used to have a saying. He'd say the early bird catches the worm. And I've followed that saying all my life because you know what? It's true. I get up at the crack of dawn and have done so since I was a wee little thing, and it's served me well, because you know what? I always end up getting the first choices in everything. Honestly, it really is worth your while getting up early. That's what I find." "So what is it going to be today, Mrs. Hornbury?" asked Maxwell. "Well, I'm having 2 of my girlfriends around for tea this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to it. I want to catch up with them. We haven't been in contact for quite a while, actually. So I want to get them something special. They're both very different. So the question is, what do I get? What is a safe bet? Your mother makes many delicious cakes. Sometimes it's impossible for me to choose." "Well, I would say, Mrs. Hornbury, that my mother's caramel cheesecake, everybody likes that. It's extremely popular. I haven't met anyone who doesn't like it. And then her apple crumb cake, well, that is a classic. People love that, and it's a very safe option, especially for entertaining your guests." "You know, you're absolutely right," said Mrs. Hornbury. "I think apples are always safe. I mean, who on this earth doesn't love an apple pie?"
And your mother's apple crumb cake is to die for. Far better than any other pie I've ever eaten. And I can certainly serve it with whipped cream, which would go down like a treat. Yes, I think I'll take the apple crumb. Last week I brought your mother's pecan nut pie, I have to tell you. And I hate to admit this to you because I don't want to sound greedy. But in 2 days it was eaten, it was so good. I caught my husband sneaking into the kitchen at the dead of night in order to have another slice of pecan nut pie. That was how delicious it was. I would have actually bought another pecan nut pie today. But I worry that my husband will finish it before my girlfriends actually arrive for tea. So it's dangerous buying that pecan nut pie. My husband can't help himself in that regard. He's got a dreadful sweet tooth, you see. Personally, I've never been much of a baker, so your mother and her cake stand has been my saving grace. She's my best-kept secret, you know, said Mrs. Hornby, tapping her nose. I hope you don't think I'm rude asking you this, Mrs. Hornby, but is your husband by any chance a big man? I'm just curious, because it sounds like he puts away a lot of food and has a very sweet tooth. Oh, he's a bottomless pit, let me tell you, Maxwell, said Mrs. Hornby, chuckling. My Angus could quite literally eat the ears of an elephant without any trouble at all. He has a humongous appetite on him. I was told when people got older their appetites were supposed to diminish. Not so with my husband. His appetite is extremely healthy. Do you know he still wears the same size pants he did when he was at senior high, and even junior high, I believe. He's a slim man, and he looks so good for his age. It's infuriating seeing him eat so many calories with nothing to show for it. If I ate what my husband did, Maxwell, let me tell you, I would be riding around the farmer's market in a scooter. I'd be that big. After Mrs. Hornby had come to the stand, it was almost as if the floodgates had suddenly opened, as more and more people were queuing up to buy cakes. At one point during the morning, Michelle Capelli looked at her son and said, Maxwell, can I ask you a big favour? You don't mind manning the stand for a while, do you? I need to do something. No, of course not, Mum. Where are you going? Well, I have my eye on some black and white prints that I think would look marvellously good in the entrance hall. There's a stand that is selling the most gorgeous prints I happened to notice a little earlier on. I've never seen the stand here before, but I noticed a couple of prints I really believe will look good, so I've decided to buy them. Good for you, Mum. Take as long as you like. I can manage here fine. Besides anything, you deserve to treat yourself. Thank you, son, I appreciate that. I'll try not to take too long. Maxwell sold a couple more cakes to rather appreciative customers, and that was when he saw a young man, who could potentially have been a couple of years older than he was, purposely striding over to his stand. The young man was handsome, quite tall and slender, with brown short hair. He was wearing a white cotton shirt that was open at the neck, and that was when Maxwell noticed he was wearing the coolest necklace he'd ever seen. Now, Maxwell was not interested in jewelry at all, but this necklace was completely different to anything he'd ever seen before, and was the exception to that rule. It was made up of a leather thong with an eagle's feather and an unusual pendant attached to it. The pendant glittered with fragments of gold and a turquoise blue stone. Maxwell rather liked gemstones, but he'd never seen anything like this before. How can I help you? He asked the young man. I'm after your carrot cake. Please tell me you have one on sale today. But of course we do, said Maxwell. Actually, you're in luck, because we only have one carrot cake left. They're extremely popular with our customers, you see. The young man looked heartily relieved. Thank goodness. I had this horrible feeling I was going to get here and the carrot cake would have been sold. I've been running around all day like a headless chicken, trying to find a present for my mother. Why are women so hard to buy presents for? It's her birthday tomorrow, you see. I knew I needed to get her carrot cake because she loves your mother's carrot cake. Let's just say when she bought a carrot cake from your stand about 3 weeks ago, she hasn't stopped talking about it. She swears that the carrot cake is the best she's ever tasted. I'm glad to say I managed to find her a present at that stand over there,"
he said, pointing to a stand not far from the cake stand, where they appeared to be selling costume jewellery. And so Maxwell surmised that the little bag that he was carrying in his hands probably contained a pretty bracelet that he'd purchased for his mother.
"Now that I've got her present, I need some birthday cake for her. So I want to get that carrot cake."
So there we are. That is the end of part 1 of our story. Part 2 is tomorrow night. I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.